media, but the CBS affiliates in the area, is thought to be by the local sheriff to be not a big issue, not anything that he has to worry about politically, because he is elected. And we are going to hear now from Constance Jiles, who attended a meeting with Christina Antalis, the assistant DA, and Jeff Silvers, a domestic violence investigator in the DA's office. And it was at 9 o'clock, and Constance went with a witness, which is her eldest daughter, Kayla. Constance, what happened at the meeting this morning at 9 o'clock, and what were the issues?
The meeting started approximately about 9:20-ish this morning. Jeff came to the lobby and introduced himself, shook our hands. We went in. He asked if we would go into a room, and I said, sure. So we went into a room, and he had a piece of paper out. And I was reading over that paper backwards, and I was like, oh, I'm glad to see this. He said, yeah, I'm going to read you your Miranda rights. And I said, finally, a month and 2 days later, congratulations. This should have been done the night that I was questioned and arrested, but it wasn't. So I'm glad to see this. So I agreed to sign it. Go ahead. No,
I'm listening. Just go ahead. He read you your Miranda rights, and you signed the form.
I did. And I asked for a copy of it, and he said he had no problem giving me a copy. So I got a copy of that. And the meeting, I feel, went great. I went in with my head strong. There was no backing down. There was no nothing. There was no middleman. There was no nothing. They weren't going to negotiate anything with me. I made that perfectly clear from the get-go. I told them that this is how it's going to be. Y'all want to be truthful? I'll be truthful. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm very outspoken and very opinionated. What took place on July 15th, 2018 was against the law, and I'm demanding charges be brought against this person. They said they don't do any of that, and I said, somebody's responsible. Somebody is going to bring charges against this Lieutenant Lowery and the deputy because, you know, he was basically her little puppet that night. He just followed along with everything that she was doing when he should have picked up the phone and stepped away and said, you know what, I don't care if you're my boss or not. I don't agree with how you're treating this homeowner, this lady who called 911 in fear of her life and her family's life. I'm calling my boss, your boss, and something's going to be done. Instead of doing that, he went ahead and became her puppet at that moment and pulled out the taser, trying to threaten to tase everybody at my house.
Well, let me ask you to break down that one scene right there, which you've recorded. One of your daughters recorded that on her phone, and so when and I don't remember seeing it myself, but your report is that the officer took the taser out, which has a laser beam on it, right? And aimed that taser and made a threat against effectively each person in that room. Well, who was in the room, Constance Jiles?
My 20-year-old, my 21-year-old daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, my daughter/niece who is 15, who was put into a panic attack after seeing me thrown to the ground, my 11-year-old daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, and my 6-year-old daughter, along with my grandsons and my 2 son-in-laws.
So the people in the room, when that taser flashed out against them, was aimed at each one of them, and the threat was made. The taser was in the hand of the deputy, the secondary deputy, and the first one, Lieutenant Lowery, is the one who made the threat. She was going to tase you all. Why? What was the reason?
The deputy had the taser in hand while Lowery had me on the ground with her knee in my back and her arm over my head and my neck while my face was pointed into the concrete driveway.
And what was the
deputy quoted, and I quote him, if y'all don't back up, we're going to tase you. Which, mind you, my kids were in the garage at this time. I'm outside of the garage at that moment because I was in the garage, and Lowery grabs me, doesn't tell me, put my hands behind my back, doesn't tell me that I'm under arrest, demands that I'm going to speak to her, and demands me to come on, lady, and throws me to the ground. No, that's not okay.
Now, the story seems when I hear this account, Constance Jiles, I hear the biblical phrase of her face turned. Remember, Cain's face turned against his brother, and King Saul's face turned against David. And there are many uses of that phrase. The king who saw the handwriting on the wall, his countenance changed, and so there was a kind of change of countenance by Lieutenant Lowery, who was there initially to help you with 2 male intruders in your house, but as the conversation progressed, turned against you, and then threw you to the ground.
Yes,
and
that is correct.
What was the crime?
That was just her way of covering up her mistake. And, you know, I've also gotten complaints throughout the year. She's been employed with Whitfield County Sheriff's Department since 2005. She's had multiple complaints brought against her, it seems like every year. And, you know, my thing to the sheriff, you're this elected big honcho official, but yet you're not concerned. You do not care what your officers are doing to your citizens. Something's wrong there.
Well, we're talking here about Sheriff, what's Sheriff Chitwood's first name, Constance?
Yes, that is correct.
What's his first name?
I believe it's Scott Chitwood.
That's right, Scott Chitwood. So we're talking about one of Scott Chitwood's county employees. Lowery, Lieutenant Lowery is an employee of the county. And now you've been charged with what? Why you're?
I was charged. I laugh now because it's ridiculous. In my own home, because I refused to talk to this officer who is rude and unprofessional and unlawful. I refused to talk to her, and I was charged with willful obstruction, people, in my own home because I chose not to talk to her. And I was told I don't have rights. I was told that by multiple people. Clay Pangle of the Sheriff's Department. I was told that by Lieutenant Lowery. And I'm surprised that I wasn't told that by the DA today, which I'm very positive about this meeting that took place this morning.
Well, because
like I told them, if y'all feel so strongly about these bogus charges in this police report, and I told them they can wipe their butt with it. I did, because to me, it's nothing. That police report is nothing from what I've got on video and my kids have on video to what this officer put in a police report. She has purged herself on a legal documentation, which is against the law. She is upheld against the law more than I am, because she's supposed to be this upstanding citizen to protect and serve and show people how you're supposed to act in public and how you're supposed to act, period.
Well, we're talking about the obstructing and hindering law enforcement officer statute in Georgia, which is 1610-24, and it says that you are guilty of this crime if you, quote, knowingly and willingly obstruct or hinder any law enforcement officer in the lawful discharge of his official duties. Well, I guess you're saying, Constance Jiles, that this was not a lawful discharge of official duty because of the changing of the countenance, and they're not being. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm
I was
listening.
going to say I called 911 because I had 2 male intruders in my home, and mind you, I have 7 daughters. You know, I mean, 2 of my babies, 8 and 6, was down in the garage playing while my son-in-law is at the top of the hill pressure washing. These gentlemen took it upon themselves to both of them come into my dwelling, my walls that is connected to my home. That is against the law. A repo in the state of Georgia has to be a peaceful repo, just as it is in the state of Tennessee. I've looked the law up. They cannot come into your home.
And the 2 repo men. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well,
I was just going to say, too, that if a vehicle is in the front of the vehicle that's in question of being repossessed, they cannot physically move that vehicle themselves to get to the vehicle that they are trying to repossess. That's also against the law, which that didn't occur. They just took it upon themselves to come in my home, just as Lowery did and just as the deputy did.
Well, they were invited into your home because you wisely and courageously called 911, Constance. Right,
I disagree. I may have called 911 for them to come out and help protect and serve my family and keep us safe from harm, but I did not invite them into my home. There's a big difference, in my opinion.
Well, how long a meeting?
I called 911. Go ahead.
Well, how long was your meeting this morning with Christina Antalis, the assistant DA, and the domestic violence investigator of the DA's office? How long did it last?
It was about an hour to an hour and 10-ish, 15 minutes long.
And what did they say to you? What did they say to you in the way of warning or caution or information, Constance?
They told me that I was, if I wanted to share my evidence with them, that they would like to see it. I refused. I told them that I would not do that. I don't have to do that, and Jeff agreed. I also told them that if they felt that the police report was set in stone, then to go forth and do whatever their heart desires. But I'm telling them right now, and I'll tell every listener, I stated to him and Christina that if they want to make themselves look like fools like the sheriff's department's doing right now, then by all means, let's take it to a grand jury, because I've got all the burden of proof. And I'm sorry, but my burden of proof overrides that he say, she say mess that's on that police report that's bogus.
Right. Well, as I pointed out to my listener, the sentence that has you being charged has nothing really prior to it that suggests what the crime is. There's not really an allegation of a crime for which arrest is the relief, right? The arrest is supposed to relieve the state of the burden of being offended by your crime. It doesn't say what your offense is that arrest will solve as a kind of release mechanism. It's just not there. And so that the report, it seems like the officer's report seems like it should be revised to insert something more from her recollections about what happened. Maybe. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Well, so
also Jeff said to me too that he said, you're very passionate about this. And I said, absolutely, I am. I grew up in the sheriff's department. This happens every day and goes untold. Look at the 87-year-old woman in Chatsworth. You know, that wasn't called for either. These officers are not above the law. They need to be corrected.
Now, tell my listener about your demands for discovery. What is discovery, and what are you asking for? Why were you glad to have this meeting? Because you've been making some demands against the state actors, the sheriff's department, and the district attorney's office. What are you after, Constance?
Well, I'm after the evidence. I'm after, all the evidence that they supposedly have against me. They're the ones that brought the charges against me. It is not my job to give them evidence that I have against them. It's vice versa. That was mentioned today in the meeting, and I was told by Christina that no court date has been set, no filing has been done. All I have right now is the charges against me from Lieutenant Lowery. They're still investigating, and they're not sure if they're going to have a court date or not. I will be notified via mail or the DA's office or the magistrate court on to if I'm going to have a court date. I asked them and demanded that this not be drawn out no 6 months. There's no sense in that. If they have everything, and I told them that I wanted, all the evidence. I wanted the witness statements. I wanted the body cam. I wanted every single thing that they supposedly have against me. So I can, on the date of court, plead guilty or not guilty in a fashionable way. I can't go in before a honorable judge and say, oh, I'm guilty or I'm not guilty, when I don't know what I'm pleading guilty or not guilty to.
Well, this is David Toulis, and I'm here at 92.7 with you. Thank you for tuning in to my program, The David Toulis Show, at the station where we argue for local economy and the free market. And I suggest here quaintly every day that you should love your neighbor and buy local. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. And we're brought to you by Nuganomics.com, the website for the man and the woman who matter. There are not really very many people like that. So they are ones who are few in number. There's a small census of the population of people who matter. And I would say that Constance Jiles is one of them. And Constance, do you know why I want to give you time to talk to my listener? Because what you're doing is really what he should be doing whenever anything like this comes up. He has to assert his rights. He has to be a belligerent claimant in person, meaning belligerent, meaning you're warlike, claimant, you're making a claim. And then in person means you're doing it personally, aggressively, in your flesh, as a woman, as a human being, as a citizen or resident of Cohutta, Georgia, and Whitfield County. You are doing that in person, and you may have a lawyer at some point. You may want to be represented at some point, but until that point where you have that expanse, you're saying, I want to know everything they've got, and they have to act in good faith. And let me ask you this: did you bring up the question, Constance Jiles, of good faith and bad faith? Because if you don't get discovery, it's bad faith. What is that?
I did. I did. Absolutely. I told Jeff, I mostly directed my conversation and meeting towards him. He seemed more professional and interested in what I had and what had gone on. Also, I told him that I have received nothing but bad faith from the sheriff himself, as well as his department and workers, and that I'm asking that the DA's office do everything that they can in good faith and do it in a timely manner.
And timely manner means what? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, there's no sense in something like this being these bogus charges being drawn out for no 6 months to a year. I mean, come on. I mean,
right, but if you're asking for evidence, if you're asking for evidence, you're asking for something to be delivered to you. Now, what does timely manner mean in that context?
Well, if they want to pursue this and go before a judge and a grand jury, I told them that in the meeting. Let's go for it. If that's what they choose to do, I'm all for it. I do not want their evidence given to me a week or two before trial or a week or two before the first court appearance. I feel that I'm being doing in good faith by allowing them 20 days before a court appearance, my first court appearance. And, you know, that gives me time to research everything more so than what I already have been doing, get more statements if need be, and, you know, determine, okay, do I need to pay the $5,000 for an attorney, or is this something that I can handle on my own? Which I do feel strong that this is something I can do on my own.
We're talking with Constance Jiles, who I offer as a model citizen, and who may need some counsel at some point. Maybe she needs some advice.
I will at some point.
But what you're doing though is you own your case, and I think that's just terrific that you own the case that's been made against you, and that's important for the listener to see how she's doing that. Demanding discovery, making demands, making personal appearances, you send at least one certified letter asking for documentation, right? I sent a certified letter as well as an email to the Post in Georgia. Post is the
offering standard training.
Right, that is police officer standardization. Go ahead.
Peace officer standard training.
Peace officer standard training. That's a nonprofit organization that holds the sort of the standards to which departments have to conform to maintain their credibility or credit.
Exactly.
Well, so you're asking for discovery. You want to have everything and in a timely manner, again, so that you now listener, just notice what she's doing. Timely manner means she's now has time to review everything, and to get an appointment with an attorney of her choice may take a week. So 20 days is certainly not unreasonable for her to digest everything, and then have obtain advice, obtain counsel, maybe get forensic evidence, all of which might take a little time before the first hearing. And you say, well, what's the big deal? Well, who cares? It's just a hearing. It's just a preliminary hearing. How do you plead? Can't she make her mind up right now whether she's going to plead guilty or not guilty? And the answer to that is, well, maybe so. And maybe you would accept that. You, my listener, might accept going before the judge half, not knowing really what's going on. But Constance is not like that. You can tell she's a very good businesswoman. She and her family, by the way, run Rooter Pros, the plumbing business in Whitfield County with a very large service area. And she, in her hand, that business, I'm very confident, is very prosperous. Rooter Pros, and her husband Roy is the man behind the auger, you might say. But you're asking for all their evidence, and you're making demands, and you're framing it that they really have to respond to you, because you are acting personally and individually, and you're asserting what kind of rights are you asserting here, Constance?
I'm asserting my constitutional right.
Yeah, and the right to due process. Due process means that if they're going to move against you and accuse you, point the finger at you, as they are the fellowship of the finger, the DA and the cops, they're a fellowship of friends. They support each other and uplift each other and are faithful to each other. If they're going to do that, they have to do it pursuant to the law. And they have to do so respecting your constitutional rights, Constance Jiles.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you don't have a court date yet, and this crew, the state actor crew, is digesting what the impression you made upon them with your daughter in attendance. So you sent me some of the statements, the written statements by eyewitnesses to the crime. You're alleging a state crime by by Officer Lowery, and you're demanding an indictment. So the DA does have authority to indict. It does have authority to do that. That's what its job is, to indict people.
That's what I thought, and that's what I kept pushing it in. Mind you, during that conversation of the meeting, Jeff never took a word because he agreed in the beginning that he was going to be truthful, and so was I. And I respected that tremendously. We need more people like him. But Christina, on the other hand, wanted to speak up and say, oh, well, that's not our job.
This is David Toulis, and we're talking with Constance Jiles. Hang on. David Toulis, Nougat Radio.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A crane crash in Hickson may be worse than we thought, although nobody was hurt when a crane toppled to the ground on Boy Scout